I would say maybe adding on some of the success criteria and learning intentions to the district resources that have already been created so that teachers can pull from there and use them as examples.
Yeah, I heard that too. Yeah, that's great. We have some, but they're exemplars and not necessarily the success criteria for every single standard. Something that I saw again and again in the journals was the feeling of lack of time to create the success criteria. We have systematized learning targets. However, often we teachers feel like that's a compliance piece, but if we could build in more time for the success criteria to get to the learning target, everything becomes so much more meaningful, right? So if I have success criteria, that means that I have a clear picture of how to get to my learning target. Anchors of learning follow, posted directions follow, and of course, like the little mini formative assessment checks throughout, that's a success criteria. We need to figure out ways to support teachers in building their own or maybe providing more numerous examples from the district. That's great. Thank you so much. And then seeing in the chat, yes, math success criteria for each TEK. Almost like a rubric for the standard. That's amazing. And Lauren, is that just work they're doing at their own campus during PLCs? How are they getting that work done?
Yes, so she's because you know how our sometimes our curriculum documents can be hard to find all the pieces.
Yeah, there's
So
like a separate, yep.
Yeah, so she's showing the teachers where they're at, and then her idea, and she was one of the, I mean, we know success criteria is good for kids and it's all that, but she's also encouraging them with their T-test evaluation and like using rubrics for students to monitor their learning. And so she was like, how can we use the success criteria here on different like student work samples and have the students say like,
Oof.
was I able to show this with a drawing? Was I able to show it with manipulatives? Was I able to show it with an algorithm? And like monitor their own learning using our success criteria to like see, you know, just for the kids to know what they're learning.
Yes. That is a great, this is what this whole session's about. I just want like developing assessment capable, visible learners. They're able to determine the best way they can show their own proficiency. That's awesome.
She's amazing. Michelle Bazan.
Okay. 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 I want to talk to her too. Okay. And then Karina saying the health and PE teachers, rubrics for their teachers on their phone or iPad. Will you speak to that a little bit, Karina?
Yes, so we have the Spark curriculum, and sometimes they have ones that they can just print out. But for PE, it's just hard to walk around with a clipboard all the time. You have all these things on your hands. And so whenever teachers have their students in stations or as they're doing their work, they can just go by real quick and just put a number on their student. So it's from 1 to 3. So
love it.
1 being they hit 1 cue, 2 being they hit 2 cues, and 3. So for example, for throwing, it'd be stepping with your opposite foot, holding the ball by your ear, and then releasing towards your target.
I would need that broken down for me. And modeled.
Yes.
And I would love a rubric to make sure I'm doing all the right things. Yes. Okay. That's awesome.
I can schedule a throwing session with you.
Okay. That's awesome. Okay, so there's just a lot of response about success criteria. So I'm thinking about how we can further that conversation in this series and across the district. For a lot of your journals, I was just like, how do we systematize this? Like, what else can we be doing? So we'll be returning to the idea of success criteria because it really is that like next level up on having learning intentions realized in the classroom. For this session today, we're going to be doing more learning about learning. So our authors in this chapter devote a lot of time to the use of strategies and how we create practice opportunities for students. So for today, our learning target will be to use a learning strategy and do a little like metacognition on our own individual use of the strategy, to think about how we teach strategies and how we further the students' guiding of their own learning with their own purposeful use of strategies. Okay. We're going to talk about best practice for using strategies. And we're going to evaluate our use of purposeful practice and cognitive study skills in our classrooms. Our language objective will be writing and sharing reflections on strategy, skills, and practice with colleagues. And our success criteria will be whether we can adjust our use of our strategy to improve our own learning, and whether we can write responses individually and as groups to central questions to advance our understanding. So to get started, I've got a lot of like preliminary kind of direction-y stuff, because most of the time in this session, you are going to be learning with your own groups. Okay, but I need to set you up for success. So again, with the kind of like meta experience of this session, we're going to take a strategy. This is a strategy our authors gave us in the chapter. It's on page 69, but I've got the directions right here for you. They call this collaborative reasoning. You know, they have their own title for this, but we've seen this in different ways in our own classrooms. So basically with collaborative reading, students get a text and then a teacher places them in small groups and they'll have read the text. Teacher gives them essential questions, and then students are meant to explain their positions on the central question and then respond and expand on their own ideas and other ideas by adding reasons and supporting evidence either from the text or their everyday experiences. So it's just that like progressive conversation. Students are asked to challenge each other's thinking and ways of reasoning. And then at the end of the discussion, a summative response for the entire group is created for the group, right? That's the strategy. But at the end of the strategy, after we've answered and responded to the central questions, it's really important that we take a moment and debrief collaborative reasoning, debrief the strategy. So we're going to have some time built into that. We're going to do, we didn't make it to all 3 rounds in the first session, but we're going to for sure hit 2 rounds of this. So we'll be able to experience it 2 different times. After the first round, we are going to debrief, and we are going to adjust for the second round because we got to own the strategy, right? So as a learner, you know that this might feel uncomfortable and weird. Anytime we're asked to do a new strategy, it's weird, right? It's not natural to us. Like throwing a ball and thinking, I don't know how to throw balls. I don't know what I'm doing. And I get real awkward when I overthink it. But with Karina's help and helping me debrief and think about the strategies I'm using, I know I would get better. And that's the whole point of becoming a learner and learning what works for me. So all that being said, let me get a little more explicit. Who's Jalen Hurts? I'm sorry.
He's currently the #1 quarterback in the NFL. The Eagles are 10-1 right now. I'm a big football fan.
Love that. Thank you. I should have played, whatever. It's fine. Thank you. I'm learning so much today. Okay. So for our first round, you should have access to your digital journal. And if you get into your digital journal around slide 28 or 29, we have like the garish December holiday colors, right? This is what you need, tools for learning. If you click on the book, that's going to give you a Kami link to your own copy of chapter 4, where you're going to be able to highlight, annotate, do whatever you need to do to engage in the text. And you'll see that starting on page 58, I've marked for you round 1. You can start reading here to start engaging in discussion on round 1 of our collaborative reasoning, and you'll stop here, right? So everything's clearly marked for you there. So we're going to first have a discussion for round 1 regarding pages 58 through 59. You're going to get in your groups. You're going to have 3 different roles, and you'll figure out the different roles, but it's determined by birthdays. So the person with the next birthday, that's going to be the facilitator. That's going to make sure that every single person is able to contribute and has space to contribute. There's going to be a recorder. I'll get to the recorder in a second. That's the person with the second next birthday. And there will be a timekeeper, just making sure that you get to the point where you're able to wrap up and have that response, that summative response for the whole group posted. Okay. So just taking you back to your, everything you need, by the way, will be right here in your digital journal. So let me just go ahead and keep it here because it's going to get confusing going back and forth. Those roles and responsibilities that I just outlined are off to the side. Okay. And then you have your essential questions right here. And then a reminder, the page numbers are right here. So you're going to get into your group. You're going to have 15 minutes. You're going to figure out whose birthday is next and when and all that, and who are the different people responsible for the different roles. And then here are some reminders from me. It might be that you read this a long time ago. It might be that, oh my, you didn't read the chapter. Life happened, but here I am, right? So as a group, you might decide, let's give each other like 5 minutes to review these pages, right? And then we're going to end that though, okay? When you figured out what you need as far as getting into the chapter and having your discussion, the facilitator will lead an initial discussion of which question do we want to answer of the 3. You don't have to answer every single one, but which one would you like to begin with as a group? And then everyone should have the opportunity, and this is also the facilitator's responsibility, of making sure everyone's invited to give their position a response, and then helping each other expand on the ideas by adding evidence, right, from either the book or their own lived experiences. And then individually, you have room in your digital journal to type in your own responses, your own notes here. Okay, is everyone with me so far? Yes, okay. Then when there's about 2 or 3 minutes left in the round, do you see this little thing at the bottom, this little text box, session 2 group responses? You have to actually click the text box to get to the link. If you try to do this, it won't take you there. But if you click on the entire text box you'll go to session 2, and that opens up yet another, it's like a journal within a journal. It's like, ooh, right? So this is where we can see everyone's responses, and you have some space here. So if you're in breakout room number 1, you're going to develop a summative response to one of the questions here. And if you can let us know which question you're responding to by typing like 2, blah, 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 that would be great. So the recorder's job, it's your responsibility to be typing into this document for your team. Okay. And then the round will end, and we'll come back and we'll debrief the content together, and then we'll talk about the whole strategy of collaborative reasonings together. Does
Can I
anyone have
ask-
any questions?
Yes, I do. So when we click, how do we get to our group responses?
At the
So that was-
bottom of everyone's journal, you've
Uh-huh.
got this red text box.
Okay, so
or-
we click on that one,
Yes, and it's yes.
session 2. Okay,
Yes, we're session 2, and so that will be our space.
thank you.
Yes, that's a great question. And I just need a little bit of time to add rows because we've got more breakout rooms than we have rows, but your breakout room number is the row you're typing into. Does that make sense? Clear as mud. Okay. So let me make sure everyone has a breakout room assigned to them. And at least one other person in their breakout room. We look good. Okay. So just to review, I'm gonna stay here because I think everything you need is on your journal and it just makes more sense. We're gonna get in our room. We're gonna figure out our roles. We're going to figure out, do we want time to read? And then we'll give our designated time, and then a facilitator will make sure that we start answering these questions and have some feedback and back and forth between that. And then we will make sure that by the end of the session, we have gotten into our group responses and contributed our group's response. Okay. All of this is part of the strategy of collaborative reasoning, right? I'm giving y'all a lot of teamwork in the name of the strategy, collaborative reasoning.
Are we answering all 3
and-
questions?
You can answer just one. It depends on what your group wants to do.
Okay.
You don't have to answer all 3. You can answer just one, whatever you have time for and whatever you want to do. Okay, but a reminder, 15 minutes to do all this work, including the rereading or the reviewing of the notes of the chapter. Hello, people are coming back. Okay, we should all be back. Let's first debrief our discussions in the collaborative reasoning groups. We were reading from pages 58 to 59, a little bit of a shorter discussion to get us started with. So I'm going to ask Mr. Pyle to choose a number between 1 and 8.
6.
Okay, that was Celia's, Lauren, and Paula's group. Will one of y'all please unmute and share a little bit about what y'all discussed?
Yeah, so right away from the very first sentence that we started reading, it said basically, teaching, and I wrote that teaching is different from learning. Students need opportunities to practice. And we kind of had a discussion where I said, you can be like an amazing, for example, basketball coach, and you can teach students or teach individuals how to dribble, how to toss the ball and do all the things. But if you never put that ball into the kids' hands, if you never give multiple opportunities to practice, right? Like you can't just hold them accountable for saying, I taught it to them, you should know it. And we hear that, right? Like I taught them. I don't know why they don't get it. They should know this by now, right? And I'm like, you can give me a basketball for weeks on end and I still won't know, ma'am. Like I still won't know. I don't even know how I use this analogy because I don't know anything about sports, but I make it work for me. But the reality is like, we need to allow time for students to have like these engaging hands-on lessons where we give them the ball, where we put it in their hands, where we let them practice and learn through trial and error to experience it for themselves. And we also added on the why, why they're doing this, so that they can really make it meaningful connections for themselves as learners moving forward.
That's great. Thank you so much. You hear this too, like we visiting classrooms and seeing teachers do their thing. Sometimes it feels like the teachers are the ones doing all the work, right? And so I think that this is kind of in line of what you're saying, where we are working so hard, but maybe we're the ones doing all the mental gymnastics of the thinking in the class, as opposed to releasing all that to students. Okay, will you please share a number? I got my numbers wrong. 1 through 5. Can you give me a number, Miss Celia, 1 through 5?
Sure, let's go with 3.
3, okay. That is Miss Cantu and Miss Salinas. I think Karina got us started on the sports analogies this morning.
I can also teach her how to shoot a basketball too.
All right.
Okay, so for us, it was pretty much the same thing. The affirmation is that students need to comprehend the why. If they don't comprehend the why, then there is going to be no thrill. And I got a lot of practice with this because in middle school, that's when we make the transition and students are starting to not want to participate in physical activity. So for me, it was always answering the why do we have to do this? So that's what made it easier for me to review our learning target for the day and then do an exit ticket. And I stopped hearing that question. Why do I need to do this? And then also allow them to have structured conversations to discuss and collaborate in order to make those real world connections.
Right. Thank you for that. Okay, so we started this with the initial reading and we talked about the idea of providing students with the time to practice, but also the idea of providing students with strategies as strategic tools, right? So let's consider this whole round that we just engaged in, and I'll like rewind us back to the beginning. Gave you some pages to review, gave you a collaborative group to work with, some roles and responsibilities, and then some questions to consider, and then asked you to complete a summative response. So let's talk about that whole strategy of collaborative reasoning in rounds. We'll come back over here. I would love you to think about, for you as a learner, engaging in this activity, this strategy, what worked for you? And if we were to tweak anything for the next round, what would you like to see tweaked that would better support your learning? Now you know what it looks like, right? There's going to be more pages. We're going to have another discussion. What worked first? And then we'll think about what should we tweak for next round. So I'm going to invite anyone to unmute or put in the chat. Let's first focus on what worked. everyone. Miss Lauren Salcedo, what do you think? I know we're adults, right? So hopefully, but what was there anything about the strategy that ensured that everyone was engaged or helped people to be engaged?
Everyone had a role.
Okay. Is it really that simple? Like, because like it's yeah.
Not necessarily, but there was also accountability. So you didn't know if you had to type in your response, but then you also didn't know if you would be called on to actually share with the group.
Nice.
So you had also that accountability to yourself. Okay, I better be on top of it.
Yeah, I love that. And probably that has to do with like the structures and routines that we're used to, right? Like always, I'm going to try to do randomize and rotate. So that might feed into the accountability. Awesome. Roles and responsibilities, so big.
I was saying the
Okay.
timer was also a big thing, that countdown timer, because it was like we couldn't really get off track and, you know, just talk about other things because it was like that timer was running, man. So you really had to stay on track and make sure that you got everything done within the appropriate time.
Right. So, and yes, thank you so much for that. So countdown timer, knowing that you only had a limited amount of time to get the work done. What else worked?
I also
There
like
was-
those central, oh, go ahead.
Okay, I don't know, it felt like a standoff. I felt like there was a manageable amount of work to do. We just had a little bit of reading. And so it wasn't it wasn't just like this overwhelming amount to get done. So there was plenty of time to get the task done.
That helps too, right? Chunking it.
I
Great.
also like the central questions because that also like focus our conversation. So in our breakout room, we started talking and then I was like, wait, which question are we actually answering right now? So also having a choice of questions was also beneficial.
Choice. Right. Thank you so much for that. Okay. It worked. These are the things that worked. Now you're the learner. I'm going to ask you to engage in round 2. There's going to be subsequent pages that we're going to be discussing for the chapter. What should we tweak for next round? What would you change to make this more successful for you?
I think one thing I'm seeing on the like criteria for success after, for example, is that students challenge each other's thinking and ways of reasoning by questioning. And we didn't really do that in my group. Nobody was really questioning other people's thoughts. And so maybe making it part of the making it a part of the discussions, like somebody has to ask one question about the text that furthers the thinking.
I love that. I wonder if maybe there could be like a moment where we play devil's advocate. And maybe that's how we get there.
The devil's advocate could be a separate role.
Ooh. Okay. Devil's advocate, a separate role. Love it. Okay. What else, y'all? What else should we change? Can't spell. Maybe some accountability talk. Do you disagree? Like having a space, like a stem for do you agree and why? Do you disagree and why? That's great.
Well, and also on the thing of disagreeing or agreeing, I don't think anyone's going to disagree that the kids need to practice the concepts, but what are the obstacles? What are the potential? Because they made it sound so simple. Hey, you just practice. It's great. No worries.
Yeah.
You know, so that the idea of what are the mitigating circumstances or what are the things that might make this difficult?
I like that. Obstacles, and Paula, you made me think about that 4A protocol where we talk about the assumptions the author's making. So that might be another way in. So Karina, would you like, maybe there should be 3 people in the breakout room, making sure that there's more?
If we're going to add a 4th role, yes.
Okay. Change number of people appropriately. Okay.
Yeah, because we didn't have enough. We only had 2 and there was 3 roles.
Saw that. Sorry. We'll figure out the people. Can I ask y'all, how did it feel to negotiate the reading, to read or not to read, and the time given to that? Was that okay? Can I tell you that first session really asked for whole group reading time? They wanted it chunked. We read together, I as a facilitator give you 5 minutes, and then y'all enter into the conversation. Does that matter to you? Would you have preferred that?
Either way.
We can okay. Okay, either way. Okay. So let me see here. Let's try it. Let's try it the way where I give you reading time, because I would love for you to see the difference and how that feels. Okay. And then I'm going to try to do some, I'm going to figure out the roles. I'm going to figure out all the things so that we can also try these other things that we talked about for tweaking. But first and foremost, let me give you the reading time, and that'll give me time to do like the behind the scenes figuring out. So we're going to go into round 2. That's going to involve the section Learning How to Learn on page 59 through 63. And on your PDF, there'll be a stop here on page 63 where you should go ahead and stop. I'm going to give you about 5 minutes to skim, reread, maybe skim for the first time, highlight whatever you want to do for that section. And I'm going to give you your purpose for reading. The central questions you're going to be discussing in the collaborative reasoning round are here. How could we support a multitude of study skills on page 60? What are some ways we could incorporate practice that is targeted, distributed, and self-directed, which you'll learn about in the chapter. And then the last 2 questions are repeats from the first round. What explanation or idea stands out to you, or what was new or affirming for you? Okay, so 5 minutes of reading. Here are the questions that you're going to be answering. They're also placed on the next page in your digital journal, so you can see them there. I'm going to set the timer and then do the thing where I ask y'all if y'all need like an extra minute. So just know that, no anxiety around the reading. We're going to get this done. So starting the timer now, feel free to turn off your camera if you need to and focus. Okay, that is time. Before we get into our instructional rounds, or the collaborative reasoning rounds, though, I want to show you a video. So I'm going to get that ready to go. Share. This is just a nice video. It's K through 5, and it demonstrates deliberate practice and offering choice. And I kind of love it. The kids are really cute in this one. So we'll watch this and it'll give us more fodder for our discussions when we're back in our rounds. Can y'all hear okay? Yeah, okay.
Many of the skills that we're trying to teach our learners they're hard. They're not skills that they're going to learn right away. And so it's important to incorporate lots of opportunities for them to practice, because with each practice, they're going to move along and they're going to become more successful in that. For example, today, my students were working on inferencing. Inferencing is not an easy skill for learners, especially from the jump between 3rd and 4th grade. I think my students were really used to the author specifically stating what they needed to know. And so inferring is something that's hard for them. They have to use what's there to make some decisions and draw conclusions, and it's not easy.
Let's come back to our seats and let's talk about this. I think there's still a little bit of confusion. Making inferences is not an easy skill, right? And finding evidence to support our inferences is definitely not easy. It's much easier when the author tells us, Fausto has a guilty conscience. Or when the author tells us, Fausto is honest. But the author doesn't tell us that. We have to use the clues in the text. And so there's still a few people that are having some difficulty identifying his action. So the first thing I want you to do is I'm going to ask you for an action. What did he do in the story? Okay? Are you ready? I'm pulling a card. Zachary.
He found a dog on the street near his house, and he lied to the owners and said that he found him by the freeway so that he could get more money and and spend it on the guitar. But after he did that, he realized that what he did was bad. So he wanted to fix his mistake. Okay. So he went to donate to the church.
That is a great summary, Zachary. You gave me a really good summary of the text. Now, the first action you talked about was that he lied to the owners. So can we just think about that one action? Okay, we're going to think about how he lied to the owners. I want you to turn to your buddy, just your buddy, and tell your buddy, the fact that he lied to the owners, what does that tell us about who he is? Ready, go.
So at first he just wants to be like a musician, right? Yeah. So he wants the money to be able to buy a guitar, but he can't afford it.
I have to create lots of opportunities for them to continue practicing. I have to create opportunities for them to see me do it as well. So when I do my think alouds, I often infer what that tells me. Today, my students revealed that they still need a lot of practice with inferring, and that maybe I need to go back and I need to model some more of what an expert does when they are making inferences, so that students can see inside my brain and see what steps they need to take to become a person who can infer using the text.
Choice in the classroom is very important. The way it lives in my classroom is that students are presented with a series of academic language sentence frames. And then students are they're shown through my lesson. But ultimately I tell them, the success criteria here, the way you'll be assessed is that I need you to use 3 of the academic language sentence frames. It's of your choosing. And I tell them, it's kind of like baking a cake. You can choose maybe chocolate, you're gonna put in a little bit of sprinkles, maybe you're gonna put a little bit of fudge, and guess what, you get to mix it. But as long as it tastes good, then I'm okay with it. Josue, what part of the book did you identify the theme?
This page, and sometimes...
Sorry, you said this page.
What page is
Now,
it?
hold on, friend. Can you walk over to our academic language? And I want you to say, instead of this page, I want you to use 2. Because this is a chance for you to get to the 3, right? Yeah. So come on over, come on over, come on over. So instead of saying in this page, I want you to choose 2 of these that you can really go back and give your group a sentence. So touch them when you're ready. So which one are you going to use? I want you to read them. Go ahead and read it.
The text indicates that.
Okay, that's one. Which other one do you want to use for evidence? Read it. Very nice. Let's go back. Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. Okay, he's back. He's back. I think he has it. All right, let's hear it.
The text indicates.
So the text indicates.
In page 4.
Let's start the sentence over.
The text indicates in page 4 is that sometimes when the man got home, sometimes when the man got home in the evening and saw that the older daughters had done nothing but play all day. And that shows us that the message of the whole book is that you need to be labeled, like Brianda said.
And so then students will do that. Students will see the academic language and they're like, okay, he wants me to give evidence and explain how I understand theme. Okay, which sentences am I going to choose and really be accountable for to explain my thinking? By giving the students a choice, it's not only really, me stepping away and going, okay, you figure it out in a negative way, but it's allowing them to feel accountable for their learning and saying, okay, I need to choose my sentences. If I need help, I gotta grab a partner and figure this one out. Because ultimately, he is expecting me to respond verbally or in my writing. And I need to choose my own sentences.
All right. So a little more fodder for us to have our discussions in our round 2. So I've got our breakout room set up. We'll be in 4-person breakout rooms. And this won't be in your digital journals. Remember how I showed you guys have the directions off to the side? Because we're adjusting and tweaking as we go along. I added a spokesperson here. So if you're the timekeeper, now you're going to be the person with the next birthday and you're the timekeeper. I'm also going to ask you to be the spokesperson for when we come back and we randomize and rotate. Okay. Facilitator will be the person with the second next birthday. Recorder will be the person with the 3rd next birthday. And then I added a role. I don't know. This is not very catchy. It's the devil's advocate / assumption person. All right. And you're going to be the person with the last birthday, the 4th next birthday. Here are your questions again. Remember that towards the end of the session, the timekeeper will be responsible for making sure that we get back to the group responses and we have time to record like a summary or one response from our group. Any questions about what we're doing? No. Okay, I'm going to give us 10 minutes since we had some time already for the reading, right? And the video watching. So we should need a little less time for the discussions. I'm opening up the rooms now. Okay, we're all coming back. So first, let's go ahead and have some whole group share out over these pages. Again, like just the big overarching idea from these pages was learning how to learn. So I'm going to ask Patrick if you could again choose a number 1 through 4 this time.
2.
2. Okay. 2.
Yes.
Y'all ready?
Perfect. Yes.
We got the time. See, we figured out the
Oh,
timekeeper.
wrong one.
Love it. Yeah, if you would share a little bit about what y'all discussed.
So we had a lot of good topics to discuss. We referenced the chart on page 16, figure 4.2 as well. And so what we were discussing is we need to be intentional with our planning. We need to be intentional with the students. Students have to understand the why of our content. And we also need to give them time to practice some of these things. We need to give them time to practice each of the steps. And so what we need to do is as teachers is we need to focus on, if we go back to that figure 4.2, on the metacognitive study skills and the affective study skills, because we discussed, our teachers are very good at the cognitive study skills, but not necessarily the other two. And what happens is, we're also not giving students the opportunity to think for themselves. We're doing a lot of the thinking for them. And so when they come to a new situation, they don't know what to do.
Agreed. And I think it even goes down to, even when we do a good job on cognitive study skills, like we're the ones kind of maintaining control, and that we name which strategy you're going to be using for today's lesson, as opposed to maybe giving them the toolkit of the different strategies that could be possible. I have seen in math classes, though, where I think maybe because it's more concrete, I don't know why, but y'all can tell me, the math people in the room, where students have been given like a list of problems to solve, but they're given lots of tools and choices to which tools they're going to use. So they might use counters, they might use number lines, I don't know all the tools, y'all. I'm sorry. But I rarely see that in classrooms. So I wonder what makes it easier maybe in a math classroom.
I think it's the way that a student, for example, if you have a student solving an equation, right, they can do it algebraically on paper, or they can use algebra tiles, or they can use like different type of diagrams to help them solve the equation, but they see things in different ways, right, depending on the student. So showing them the different ways that they can solve it, and then giving them the opportunity to run with whatever works for them has definitely helped.
Yeah, I wonder, anything else?
Yes, I wanted to add, sometimes it's part of our TEKS. In the standard, it states that students are expected to use, pictorial representations, models, equations. So it's part of the standard. So if you're seeing that, that's a good thing, because that means that teachers are teaching the standards.
I think there was one classroom where we were looking at the standard and it was use strategies. Is strategies like actually listed in the standard? And one of the, is that even right? Remotely right?
Yes, yes, it mentions the word strategies and then it gives examples of what strategies they can
Well,
use.
then it's baked into the standard. That helps a lot. Versus our process skills and other content areas. I think sometimes because they're not listed as strategies, right? They're like like the process skills. I'm going to give an example, metacognition. Our process skills for that are visualization, summary, like we saw in the book, right? Main idea. Like we tell the kids, this is the skill and this is the strategy. And it's like isolated within one day. You kind of saw that in the video, right? With the inferring, but we never teach the kids all these skills are for comprehension. Like the name of the game is comprehension. So what if instead we were saying first draft read, comprehend, here's a list of ways that you know how to use the tools that we've learned and that feel best for you. That's just a different kind of dynamic, a different paradigm, organization, all of it. Okay, I would love to hear from one more group. So Jesus, you were sharing, can you please pick a number 1 through 3?
3.
Oh, okay. So 3, who's ready from room number 3 to share?
That was us.
Yay.
So our devil's advocate, she really just talked about obstacles teachers would have into implementing teaching students how to learn these study skills. And so to teachers saying things like, I don't have time to come up with a day of choice. Like I don't have time to come up with choice lessons where students get to pick from multiple things, or sometimes teachers, if they don't know their content well enough, don't even know like what those choices could look like. Or, you know, I think an obstacle I see a lot too is like, well, we have to get through content. So I don't have time to focus on, you know, certain skills. But really providing teachers with, I think at maybe the beginning of the year, at the beginning of units, like it's a great time for vertical alignment. What are 3 to 4, maybe 3 skills that students really need this year? I know in social studies, it would probably be something like memorizing vocabulary, right? And then asking teachers, okay, how can we incorporate that into your classroom every week, once a week, where students are doing that, they're memorizing vocabulary. And so just finding ways to make it more accessible for teachers to do these things, or, you know, providing micro models of how to provide choice lessons to students as well, and giving them those resources and ideas, because there's also a lot of resources already out there created where you can build up these study skills for students without having to do a lot of legwork on your own.
Right. And I love the way you organize it around the beginning of the unit, because these seem like the academic vocabulary, it's perennial, it's always, but at the beginning of each unit, can we isolate the tools, the strategies we're going to share with kids so that we can make sure that the practice is distributed across the unit?
Right. It's really about thinking, how do you make skills a part of your learning intentions for every single unit?
And not just the content, not just the nouns and the verbs.
Exactly.
Love that. Look, you're getting a lot of affirmation in the screens. I don't know if you can see. I just want to make sure you knew about it. That is awesome, y'all. Okay. Speaking of, right, this was like the content discussion. Let's like go now talk about the strategies. Let's talk about what worked this round. So I'm going to ask y'all to think about collaborative reasoning, the rounds, the beginning to end of it, even the reading, the pre-reading time and the video watching. What worked to have more successful learning thinking in this round?
I really liked the reading time because it was long. It was a longer reading. And so I didn't feel pressured to like finish it, like skim through it. I could read it.
Thank you.
I like that the reading was paired with like a visual or audio. So that was like relatable and more kind of deepening the understanding of the concept.
Awesome.
I think it was apparent that having the devil's advocate or the assumptions position, one of the groups presented on that and talked about that, was a way to maybe I know in our group, it stimulated deeper conversation and even a look at strategies that could solve that.
Nice. Great. Anything else for what worked? Okay, if we had all the time in the world and we're going to stay together and skip lunch happily and do round 3 of this, what would we tweak for the next 3rd round?
I needed something to do during the video, like a central question or notes.
Okay, a purpose for the video. Nice.
Because I don't pay attention if I don't have something to do.
It's funny because I really appreciated the video because the reading was like, it was way too much for me.
Oh,
thank goodness there's a video.
funny. Uh-huh.
Well, thinking about this in a broader context, if you have learners that need more support, maybe having sentence stems. I know we're adults and we might not need them, but sometimes they're nice because you just don't have to think. for different.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, so if you have that for some people who are just need some
Getting
way to
started.
get stimulators started.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. Okay. We have some thoughts about how we would tweak for next round, and now just consider the use of this strategy and the way the strategy was hopefully taught in this session, right? You got to know what are the steps and the processes of the strategy, right? You got to engage in it, and then you had some time to debrief what worked, what didn't, and you also were able to impact the second iteration of the strategy. What might teaching strategies in this way do for our learners? What would be the benefit of teaching strategies this way be for students?
It would give them that ownership of their own learning. If like we get to do this, and that goes back to the whole effective study skills. So like it gives them that ownership and that agency in their learning.
Thank you for that. Anything else?
It's building. I'm sorry.
This is just kind of building on what Marshall said. It's the pride. Imagine how excited a kid is going to be if you're like, we're going to add a devil's advocate because you know Jose told us to. Yeah. I mean, that's it. And they're going to be like, yeah, that's right. That's because of me. I think it would build that pride, and that goes along with that advocacy and ownership.
Yeah. And then to have someone say, and that deepened our conversation, you know, that slight tweak and adjustment. Yeah. Anything else?
I just like the fact of the devil's advocate role, because there's always that one kid that just wants to have the last word, always wants to have the attention centered on them. And so it gives them something important to do. I get to disagree with everybody. I could just picture a couple of kids in my head, saying that's your role.
Right.
And so I think that
was a good adjustment. Yeah.
I like that it also gives us the opportunity to get the students' perspective on their learning. Like, I know we collaborate with adults all the time, but to hear the students' perspective on what they would change is pretty eye-opening for teachers and educators, I think.
I agree. I feel like you are creating or establishing this culture in your classroom that is more has student choice and student voice versus kind of like what we typically see in some classrooms where it's more teacher led. And so I like this.
Yes. And then all of a sudden the strategies become ours. Like this is what we do. And then I think too, one thing to keep in mind as the teacher, y'all, as the teacher, I'm not always going to be able to have a video and a text, right? Like it's not going to work out that way. But if you as the student know we're about to do collaborative reasoning rounds and just having a purpose really works for you, maybe it will be incumbent on you to create the purpose. Or maybe think about this in secondary, maybe even elementary. Maybe it's incumbent on you to find the extra visual resource before you enter into that conversation because you needed it last time around. And then when we talked about, Jesus mentioned different situations. There's always going to be a different situation, but having the time and space to think about what I needed and what worked for me then gives me the ownership of taking that to a different situation and making it happen, being my own advocate, right? Finding my own purpose. When I read a text, I'm not always going to have the questions at the beginning, but I have to get some meaning of it. Okay. Thank you all so much for this. I have in the chat the sign in and feedback. I'll go ahead and post it one more time. And then Karina, always with the resources in the chat. Thank you so much for that. We are a little bit over, so I appreciate your patience. Hope if I don't see you, hope you have a wonderful break, well-deserved break. Take care of yourselves. It's going to be fast and furious until the end of the school year, but we got this. I believe in us. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Play a little more Van for the way out.
And they'll lay you down low and easy. And the loves that you kiss will say Christmas. Hear the mass that you travel the distance. You will leave no